The sound of glass shattering cut through the wedding hall like a gunshot. I froze. The red wine slid down the front of my pale blue dress, dark and spreading, until it looked like a wound blooming across my chest. The laughter stopped. The music died. For a moment, it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Then came her voice, sharp, cold, cutting through the silence. "Oh my God, you ruined my dress, you stupid woman. What is wrong with you?" Every head turned. Every eye was on me. The bride, my son's bride, stood there in white silk, her face twisted in disgust. I tried to speak, but my voice broke before the words came. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to help. I reached out, but she stepped back like I was something filthy. Then the glass slipped from her hand and hit the floor. The red spilled across the marble, and her hand came up fast. The slap echoed through the hall like thunder. I stumbled. My cheek burned. My eyes blurred with shock and tears. Somewhere someone gasped, and then I heard my son's voice, low, steady, dangerous. "Emily, what did you just do?" That was the moment everything changed. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to know who I am. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 66 years old. I grew up in a small coal town in Pennsylvania, a place where people worked hard, prayed harder, and learned to survive on next to nothing. My husband, Robert, died when our son, Ethan, was 12. The mine took him, like it took so many men from our town. They said it was an accident. I called it slow murder. Years of breathing dust until his lungs turned black. After he passed, I was left with a house I could barely keep and a boy I had to raise alone. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, morning shift at the diner, cleaning offices at night, sewing on weekends. My hands were cracked from soap and bleach. My feet never stopped aching, but I didn't care. As long as Ethan had food, books, and a chance to be more than this town, it was worth it. Ethan was a quiet boy, polite, sharp as a blade, even when he was small. He'd sit at the kitchen table, studying under the weak yellow light while I hemmed shirts and counted coins in a coffee tin. He'd look up and say, "Mom, when I grow up, you'll never have to work again." I'd laugh. "Life doesn't work that way, sweetheart." But deep down, I hoped he'd prove me wrong. And he did. He worked harder than anyone I'd ever seen. He earned scholarships, awards, things I didn't even understand. He left for college with a second-hand suitcase and more determination than fear. Years passed. My boy became a man. He built a company called Root Rise, something that helped families manage money and build savings. He said it was for people like us, for the ones who worked hard but never got ahead. When he flew me to New York for the first time, my heart almost burst. His apartment was high above the city, glass walls, marble floors, and a view that made me dizzy. He hugged me and said, "You did this, Mom. Everything I am is because of you." And then I met her. Emily Parker. She was beautiful, sophisticated, the kind of woman who looked like she belonged in a magazine. Her smile was warm, at first. Her words soft. She called me Mom Margaret, brought me flowers, asked about my hometown. I thought she was kind. I thought my son had found someone who'd love him for his heart, but kindness can wear a mask. And little by little, the cracks began to show. It started small. The way she'd correct how I pronounced things, like caramel or coupon. The way she'd glance at my hands and say, "You really should treat yourself to a manicure." "Mrs. Collins." She'd laugh like it was a joke. But I could feel the distance growing between us. At dinners, her friends would talk about places I'd never been, things I'd never owned. One night I reached for the wrong fork, and she laughed softly. "Oh, Margaret, that's the salad fork, not the entree." Everyone laughed. I smiled, pretending it didn't sting. Still, I tried. I smiled at her wedding plans. I listened to her endless talk about color palettes and designer dresses. I even helped with small things. Folding cards, sewing ribbons. She thanked me but never used them. The night before the wedding, I looked at the pale blue dress Ethan picked for me. "You deserve something beautiful, Mom," he'd said. For the first time in years, I believed him. The next morning, the hall glowed with gold chandeliers and white roses. The music played softly. Guests laughed easily, people who'd never worried about rent. I stood near the back, smiling at strangers who didn't smile back. I was proud, nervous, happy, until I saw a young waiter, his tray shaking under the weight of too many glasses. He looked terrified. Without thinking, I said, "Here, honey, let me help you." He smiled, relieved. Everything was fine, until my heel caught the edge of the rug. I stumbled. The tray tilted. The glasses fell, and the red wine flew through the air. Splattering across Emily's white dress, the music stopped. The laughter died, and my world went silent. Her face went pale, then twisted with anger. "You ruined everything," she screamed. And before I could blink, the slap, the hall froze. And then my son's voice broke through it all. "Emily, tell me you didn't just hit my mother." She tried to defend herself. "She embarrassed me. In front of everyone." But Ethan's voice was calm, cold. "The only person embarrassing me right now is you." He took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for this interruption. But it seems today isn't just about vows. It's about respect." People stared. Cameras flashed. My mother raised me alone. She worked her hands raw so I could stand here today. If you can't respect her, you don't respect me. He turned to me, took my hand gently. "I'm sorry, Mom. You didn't deserve this," I whispered. "Ethan, this is your day." He shook his head. "A wedding built on disrespect isn't a marriage. It's a mistake." Then he looked at Emily. "You showed me who you are. Maybe I needed to see it." She tried to speak. "Ethan, please." He stepped back. "I can forgive an accident, but not cruelty. The wedding is off." Gasps, whispers. Emily's father muttered under his breath. But Ethan just led me away down the aisle, past the silence, through the doors. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and cool. We got into the car meant for the bride and groom. No bouquet, no champagne. Just a mother and son breathing in the ruin of a dream. He stared out the window and whispered, "I thought I knew her." I held his hand. "Sometimes we love the idea of someone, not the truth of them." He smiled faintly. "I didn't just lose a wife today. I found out what kind of man I am, and I realized I hadn't lost either. I'd gained something too. The proof that I'd raised a good man. Months passed. Ethan stayed at our old lake house for a while, quiet, reading, fixing things, healing. Sometimes I'd visit. We'd sit by the water, not saying much. He once said, "I keep wondering how I missed the signs." I told him, "You didn't miss them. You just believed in love." Then one morning the doorbell rang. Emily, no makeup, no ring, just tears. "Mrs. Collins," she whispered, "may I come in?" She sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd once cried. "I came to say I'm sorry." What I did was unforgivable. I looked at her for a long time, then said softly, "Do you know why I tried to help that waiter? Because I saw myself in him. I wasn't trying to ruin your day. I was trying to save his." She started to cry. "I know. I was trying so hard to look perfect that I forgot to be kind. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say this." I took a breath. "You were young. Pride can make us cruel, but cruelty doesn't have to define us forever." She sobbed harder. And without thinking, I reached out and held her. That's what forgiveness sounded like. Not applause, not words, just two broken hearts beating softly together. She left that day changed. She never asked Ethan for another chance, but she sent a letter. He read it and said, "I don't hate her. I just hope she finds peace." That's when I knew my boy had grown into a man with grace. Ethan started a scholarship fund for minors' children, in memory of his father. He rebuilt the company with new purpose, and me? I still live in my little house, still bake bread on Sundays, still watch the sunset over the same hills where I once dreamed of better days. But now, when people see me, they don't see a poor widow anymore. They see a woman who raised a man who chose kindness over pride. One evening as we sat on the porch, Ethan handed me a cup of tea. He said, "I used to think forgiveness was weakness. Now I see it's the only way forward." I smiled. "Forgiveness isn't for them, sweetheart. It's for us." He leaned his head on my shoulder, and we watched the fireflies blink in the dark. I realized then, you can't control what people do to you, but you can control how you carry it. And grace, even when it trembles, is still stronger than pride. I watched my son lose a bride, but gain something far greater, his truth. I watched a broken apology become the start of healing, and I learned that love isn't about never falling apart. It's about learning how to stand again, softly. So if you've ever been humiliated, betrayed, or hurt, remember this. You don't need revenge to find peace. Sometimes the loudest justice is quiet forgiveness.